Hello bookworms, welcome back to the Bonafide Bookworm. I'm your host Rachel and we are reading Touching the Void by Jo Simpson. A few notes. I don't have a book to review right now. I just wanted to mention that while editing I've noticed a few things. Apparently I talk sideways, I talk out of the side of my mouth. I don't know if I've had like a mini stroke or too much Botox and they hit a nerve, but it's very funny to actually see yourself and try to edit that down into something usable. So I just thought that was just kind of funny. A few other things. I've been having trouble with my ring light. It didn't come with an adapter to plug into the wall, so I usually just plug it into my laptop, but for some reason it was not playing nice. So hopefully my ring light stays on and we can get through this little bit of this book. I'm going to change the format a little bit. Some of the feedback I've had is that some people would prefer to have shorter videos, but more often. So I'm going to try that format. I'm going to try and do shorter videos, but upload more often. So if I'm in the same shirt, it's probably because I just kept on filming that day. So anyway, let's get started. And I believe we left off, they camped for the night and we're planning for tomorrow. So we're on page 23 if you are following along. Our next objective was to climb, Our next objective was to be the unclimbed south ridge of Cerro Yantori, only a short walk across the riverbed from our tents. Indeed, it looked as if we would be in sight of camp all the way to the summit. The south ridge ran from right to left up early rocky outcrops before forming a long and elegant corniced snow ridge, which led to a highly unstable area of seracs that mushroomed to the summit. We would bivouac. It's bivouac, bivouac, high on the ridge, either on the way up or on the descent, to test out our theories about the weather. The morning was cold and sunny, but an unusually menacing look in the sky in the east persuaded us to leave the south ridge of Yantori for another day. Simon went off for a bath and shave in a nearby ice melt pool, while I set off with Richard to see whether we could buy milk and cheese from the girls at the huts. They seemed pleased to see us and were delighted to sell us their homemade cheese. Through Richard's halting Spanish, we discovered that their names were Gloria and Norma, and that they slept in the huts when they brought their father's cattle up to the high pastures. They had a wild, abandoned look about them, but they took great care of the little children, who seemed perfectly well able to look after themselves. We idled in the sun, watching them at work. 3-year-old Alicia, whom I had nicknamed Paddington, guarded the entrance to the cattle enclosure, preventing the cows and calves from escaping, while her brothers and sisters milked or held back the calves from suckling or prepared the way in muslin bags. Everything was done with laughter at an unhurried, happy pace. We arranged for Gloria's brother, Spinoza, to bring us supplies from the nearest village in the next few days and returned to camp nibbling on the cheese, keeping a wary eye on the clouds, which were about to empty their loads earlier than usual. The prospect of fresh vegetables, eggs, bread, and fruit was almost too much to contemplate after 2 weeks on a monotonous diet of pasta and beans. The next day, we left the camp early for Yantori. It was an inauspicious start. The screes proved highly dangerous, with stone falls smacking down on them from high on the rubble-strewn west face above us. We were nervous and jittery and wanted to move fast, but our heavy sacks dictated otherwise. Halfway up the lower screes, Simon realized he had left his camera down where he had last rested. He dumped his sack and ran back down while I carried on upwards to the right, heading for the protection of the lower rock walls. By 6 o'clock that evening, we were established high on the ridge, but the weather had taken a turn for the worse, and dark, threatening clouds were rapidly converging on our exposed position. As darkness fell, we erected our little bivy tent against a small sheltered rock wall, and settled down anxiously to sleep. It snowed steadily through the night, but the feared storm did not materialize. Our weather theory seemed to be borne out. We started up the snowy South Ridge in high hopes next morning, but at 18,000 feet, we were forced to give up the struggle. Waist-deep powder snow had reduced us to an exhausted wallowing. The heavily corniced ridge would be far too dangerous. When I plunged through a fissure, splitting a double cornice below the summit seracs, and could see clear down the west face, we decided to call it a day. Tired out, we returned to the tents after a trying descent of the loose rubble strewn walls of the west face. At least now we had some vital answers about the weather. Doubtless there would be serious storms at times, but at least we wouldn't have to retreat to the first sign of cloud buildup. 2 days later, we set off again, this time for the south ridge of Sierra Norte. It looked spectacular from base camp, and as far as we knew, it had never been climbed. As we drew closer, we began to see why. Back home in Sheffield Alros had told us that this was a ridge of some difficulty. On close inspection, we realized that Al's reputation for understatement was woefully justified. After a cold and cramped bivouac, we again sloughed up exhausting powder snow to reach a high col at the foot of the ridge. An astonishing series of cornices protruding almost vertically from the ridge leapfrogged 2,000 feet above us to the summit. To have touched the bottom cornice with an ice axe would have brought the whole mass of tottering ice tumbling down onto our heads. We managed to laugh at the waste of effort and wondered what Richard would think of our third failure to reach a summit. But we were fit, acclimatized, and ready now for our main objective, the west face of Sula Grande. For 2 whole days, we gorged ourselves on food and sunshine, preparing for the west face. I began to feel spasms of fear now that we were committed to Sayula in the next fine weather window. What if something went wrong? It wouldn't take much to kill us off. I saw how very much alone we had chosen to be and felt small. Simon chuckled when I mentioned my worries. He knew the cause and probably felt the same tension inside. It was healthy to be a little scared and good to sense my body responding to the fear. We can do it. We can do it, I kept repeating like a mantra whenever I felt that hollow, hungry gap in my stomach. It wasn't false bravado. Psyching up for it, getting ready to make the final move, was always a difficult part of preparation for me. Rationalization, some people called it. Bloody frightened seemed a better description and more honest. Okay, Simon said finally. We snow hole at the foot of the face, then go in one push the next day. 2 days up, 2 days down, I reckon, if the weather holds. In the morning, the outlook was bleak. Clouds hid the peaks, and only their flanks were visible beneath a murky ceiling. There was an odd sense of menace in the air. We both noticed it as we packed our rucksacks in readiness for an early start the following day, should the weather change. Was this to be a full-bore storm or simply an earlier than usual present from the Amazon? I pushed an extra cylinder of gas into my sack. I wouldn't mind winning the next one. So far, it's mountains 3, climbers 0. I smiled at Simon's rueful expression. It'll be difficult on Sayula. For a start, it's too bloody steep to hold much powder. 4 days, you reckon then? Richard repeated casually. 5 at the outside, Simon glanced at me. And if we're not back after a week, we'll be the proud owner of all of our gear. I could see that Richard laughed, only because we laughed. I didn't envy him the wait, never knowing what might be happening up there. 5 days is a very long time, especially on your own with no one to talk to. You'll probably be jumping to all sorts of conclusions after 3 days, but try not to worry. We know what we're doing, and if something goes wrong, there's nothing whatever you can do. That's an awful feeling. These people are nuts. So we're gonna stop here for today. We're on page 26, and we'll pick up again at the next recording. I hope you enjoyed reading along with me, and I hope you visit again. Thank you.